Most people watching this right now feel it already. Something is off. Life looks normal on the surface, but underneath it, there's tension. Bills are tighter, people are angrier, everyone feels rushed, distracted, tired. And the dangerous part is this: most people can sense what's coming, but they're doing nothing to prepare for it. I didn't train for war because I loved pain. I trained because hard times don't send invitations. They arrive unannounced. And when they do, they don't care how comfortable your life used to be. That's why I'm saying this clearly right now. Hard times are coming, not in a dramatic movie sense, not tomorrow morning, but pressure is building, and the people who ignore it will be the ones who break first. I've seen this pattern before, not on the news, on the ground. Before things fall apart, there's always a phase where people convince themselves everything is fine. They scroll, they distract themselves, they wait for someone else to fix it. According to risk analysts who study societal stress cycles, the most dangerous moment isn't the collapse, it's the period right before it, when warnings are ignored because discomfort feels inconvenient. And here's the problem most people don't want to hear: the world doesn't become dangerous all at once. People become weak slowly. Comfort creeps in, discipline disappears, resilience gets replaced with convenience. Then, when pressure finally shows up, panic takes over. In the SEAL teams, we were taught something very simple: you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. That's not motivation, that's reality. When stress hits, your body and mind don't ask what you believe. They default to what you've practiced. Researchers who study high stress performance have found the same thing. Under pressure, decision making quality drops unless the situation feels familiar. Familiarity comes from training, not hope. Right now, most people are training for comfort. They wake up when they feel like it. They avoid hard conversations. They avoid physical strain. They avoid mental discomfort. And then they're shocked when anxiety controls them. They're shocked when they freeze under pressure. That's not bad luck. That's unpreparedness. Here's the hopeful part, and this is where most people miss the opportunity. You don't need to predict exactly what's coming. You don't need to obsess over headlines or timelines. In the military, we never trained for one specific scenario. We trained to function under uncertainty. That's the difference. There's a reason elite units don't wait for motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline is not. Studies in performance psychology consistently show that people who rely on routine outperform people who rely on emotional drive, especially in unstable environments. In simple terms, the calm, trained person wins when chaos shows up. The biggest mistake I see people make is thinking they'll get serious later. Later when things are clearer, later when they have more time, later when they feel ready. That moment never comes. Pressure doesn't wait for permission. There's a small shift that changes everything, and it's something we lived by. You train before you need it. You make hard things normal while life is still relatively easy. You introduce discomfort on your terms so it doesn't control you when it shows up uninvited. That doesn't mean living in fear, it means living in reality. Fear comes from being unprepared. Confidence comes from knowing you've put in the work. According to resilience researchers who study military and emergency responders, preparedness dramatically lowers panic response, even when situations escalate quickly. This isn't about becoming extreme or paranoid. It's about becoming stable while others become reactive. While people around you are overwhelmed, you stay grounded. While others freeze, you move. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to warn you early enough that you can do something about it. Hard times don't destroy people. Untrained people destroy themselves when hard times arrive. And the good news is this: if you start preparing now, even in small ways, you'll already be ahead of most people. Because when pressure finally shows itself, and it will, the calm will stand out, and the calm will lead. Most people don't realize this, but comfort is not neutral. Comfort is training. Every time you choose the easy option, you're teaching your nervous system a lesson. You're teaching it that resistance is something to avoid, not something to handle. And that's where the real danger starts, because when life eventually removes comfort, your mind panics before your body even knows what to do. I've watched strong looking people fold fast, not because they were weak, but because they had never practiced being uncomfortable on purpose. In the teams, comfort was treated like an enemy, not because we hated rest, but because we understood what comfort does when it becomes your default setting. It dulls awareness, it weakens urgency, it convinces you that tomorrow will always look like today. Right now, most people are living in the softest conditions humans have ever experienced, yet anxiety is higher than ever. That's not a coincidence. Behavioral psychologists have observed that prolonged comfort lowers stress tolerance and reduces the brain's ability to regulate fear responses. In simple terms, the more you avoid discomfort, the louder your fear becomes when discomfort is unavoidable. Here's the scary part. You don't lose resilience all at once. You lose it quietly. You stop pushing physically. You stop challenging yourself mentally. You avoid boredom. You avoid silence. You avoid effort. And then one day, something small feels overwhelming. A setback feels catastrophic. Pressure feels personal. That's when people say, I don't know what's wrong with me. What's wrong is that comfort trained you for a world that doesn't exist. In the military, we didn't wait for chaos to harden us. We created controlled discomfort daily, cold, fatigue, repetition, boredom, not because it was impressive, but because it worked. According to performance research on elite units and first responders, exposure to manageable stress builds long-term resilience far more effectively than avoiding stress entirely. Stress, when controlled, becomes armor. The solution isn't extreme living, it's intentional resistance. You don't need to turn your life upside down. You need to stop protecting yourself from every uncomfortable sensation. Physical discomfort teaches the body it can endure. Mental discomfort teaches the mind it doesn't need to panic. Together, they rebuild confidence from the inside out. Here's where most people mess this up. They wait to feel motivated. They wait for the right mood. They wait for inspiration. That's comfort wearing a disguise. Motivation is emotional. Emotions are unstable. Discipline is structural. Structure holds when emotions collapse. Studies in habit formation show that people who act regardless of mood build far more consistency than those who wait for the right feeling. Waiting feels safe, but it keeps you fragile. There's a small, almost boring trick that works better than anything dramatic. Make discomfort part of your routine, not your reaction. Cold exposure, physical training when you don't feel like it, sitting with silence instead of reaching for distraction, doing the hard task first, not last. These aren't heroic acts, they're quiet repetitions that tell your brain, I've been here before. When discomfort becomes familiar, fear loses its edge. Your heart rate still rises, but your mind doesn't spiral. That's the difference between someone who panics and someone who performs. Neuroscience research shows that repeated exposure to controlled stress reduces amygdala overactivation, which is a technical way of saying this. Your brain stops overreacting. Comfort promises safety, but it delivers fragility. Discomfort feels threatening, but it delivers stability. That's the paradox most people never figure out. They chase ease, then wonder why pressure destroys them. The people who train discomfort quietly become the calm ones everyone looks to when things get tense. This isn't about punishment, it's about preparation. You don't train discomfort because life is cruel. You train because life is unpredictable. When you choose resistance today, you buy calm tomorrow. And the hopeful truth is this: you don't need years, you don't need perfection, you need consistency. Every small act of voluntary discomfort is a message to your future self that says, you'll be ready. When hard times start pressing in, comfort addicts will panic, but the ones who trained against comfort will already feel familiar with pressure. That's when you realize something important. Comfort never made you safe, preparation did. The moment people break is almost never the moment they think it is. It doesn't happen when the body gives out. It happens when the mind decides the story is over. I've seen people with plenty left in the tank collapse because they believed the voice in their head that said, this is too much. That voice sounds convincing. It feels logical, and most people obey it without question. In training, we learn very quickly that exhaustion lies. The body sends warning signals early, not because it's finished, but because it's trying to conserve energy. That's survival biology. The problem is modern life teaches people to treat every signal as an emergency. A little discomfort feels like danger. A little fatigue feels like failure. Over time, the mind becomes the weakest link. There's a concept we live by in the teams called the 40% rule. When your mind is screaming that you're done, you're usually not even halfway there. That's not bravado. That's been backed up by military performance research showing perceived exhaustion arrives far earlier than actual physical limitation. The brain pulls the emergency brake long before the engine is damaged. Most people never learn this because they never test it. They quit workouts early. They avoid mental strain. They stop the moment it gets uncomfortable. Then when real pressure hits, their mind has no reference point for endurance. It assumes discomfort equals danger and shuts everything down. What makes this dangerous is how fast mental collapse spreads. One negative thought becomes a conclusion. One moment of fatigue becomes a verdict on your ability. Neuroscience studies on stress response show that once the brain interprets a situation as overwhelming, rational decision-making drops sharply. You don't think clearly, you react emotionally. That's when people freeze, panic, or make decisions they regret. The solution isn't forcing toughness through ego, it's learning to recognize false quit signals. In the military, we were taught to break everything down into the smallest possible unit. You don't survive the day, you survive the next minute. You don't finish the evolution, you finish the next task. That's not weakness, that's precision. Research on cognitive load supports this approach. When the brain focuses on short, achievable objectives, stress hormones decrease and performance stabilizes. In plain terms, narrowing your focus keeps your nervous system from spiraling. Big pictures overwhelm fragile minds. Small steps keep you moving. Here's where most people still get it wrong. They argue with the discomfort, they try to reason their way out of it, or worse, they shame themselves for feeling it. That only adds another layer of stress. The brain doesn't need lectures, it needs proof. There's a simple trick that works when everything feels heavy. Don't negotiate with a thought that says, stop. Acknowledge it, then redirect your attention to action. One breath, one step, one rep, one decision. That tiny action breaks the loop. Over time, your brain learns that discomfort doesn't mean danger. It means effort. According to performance psychologists who work with special operations and emergency responders, this skill alone separates high performers from average ones. Not strength, not talent, mental pacing, the ability to stay present under strain. What most people don't realize is that mental endurance is trainable. Just like muscles adapt to resistance, the mind adapts to sustained effort, but only if you expose it gradually. Avoidance makes the threshold lower. Exposure makes it higher. This is why people who train under fatigue become calm under pressure. Their mind has been there before. The stress feels familiar. Familiarity kills panic. Panic only thrives in the unknown. Hope comes from understanding this truth. You are not as weak as your thoughts tell you when things get hard. You've just been listening to untrained signals. Once you start pushing slightly past the urge to quit consistently, everything changes. Confidence stops being a feeling. It becomes a memory of what you've survived. Hard times don't defeat people with superior strength. They defeat people who believe every thought they have. When you learn to separate sensation from reality, pressure loses its power over you. And once you realize that the breaking point is usually a lie, you stop fearing it. You respect it, you manage it, but you no longer obey it. That's when real resilience begins. Most people expect hard times to announce themselves loudly. They imagine alarms, headlines, dramatic turning points. That's not how it happens. Real pressure creeps in quietly. It shows up as small disruptions, mild confusion, slow erosion, and that's why so many people are caught off guard. They're waiting for a clear signal while the ground is already shifting under their feet. I've learned this lesson the hard way. In real operations, the most dangerous moments weren't the obvious ones. It was the calm before escalation, when nothing looked urgent enough to act on. People relaxed, systems loosened, attention drifted. According to crisis response researchers, most large-scale failures aren't caused by sudden chaos, but by early warning signs being dismissed as insignificant. By the time danger is undeniable, options are limited. The same thing happens in everyday life. Financial strain doesn't start with collapse, it starts with small compromises. Health doesn't fail overnight, it fades through neglected habits. Mental stability doesn't disappear suddenly, it erodes through chronic stress and avoidance. Hard times don't kick the door in, they knock softly until no one answers. The danger here is psychological. When threats aren't obvious, people delay preparation, they assume there's more time. They tell themselves they'll adjust when things get worse. Risk analysts consistently point out that humans are terrible at responding to slow-building danger. We're wired to react to immediate threats, not gradual ones. That wiring becomes a liability in modern life. In the teams, we didn't prepare for one specific scenario, we prepared for uncertainty itself. We built systems that held up when information was incomplete and conditions changed fast. That mindset applies everywhere. You don't need to know exactly what's coming to be ready for pressure. You need routines that function when clarity disappears. This is where most people make a critical mistake. They focus on external preparation while ignoring internal readiness. They stock tools, plans, and contingencies, but neglect their nervous system. They assume knowledge will carry them through. Under stress, knowledge is useless if your mind locks up. Studies in emergency decision-making show that even highly trained individuals perform poorly when stress overwhelms emotional regulation. The solution is simple but uncomfortable. You build stability before you need it. You train when things feel normal. You rehearse calm in low-stakes moments so it shows up automatically when stakes rise. This is why daily routines matter more than emergency plans. Systems beat intentions every time. There's a small shift that changes how you experience pressure. You stop waiting for certainty. You accept that uncertainty is permanent. When you do that, your behavior changes. You act earlier, you simplify decisions, you conserve energy, you stop chasing perfect answers and start building durable habits. Here's the mistake people repeat over and over. They confuse preparedness with control. They think being ready means predicting outcomes. It doesn't. It means being able to function when outcomes are unclear. According to resilience research in military and disaster response populations, those who focus on adaptability outperform those who focus on prediction. The quiet trick that works is stress inoculation, small, regular exposure to challenge, time pressure, decision making when tired, physical effort without perfect conditions. These experiences teach your nervous system that uncertainty is survivable. Over time, the unknown loses its grip. When pressure finally increases, and it will, you won't feel brave. You'll feel familiar. That's the advantage. Familiarity breeds competence. Competence breeds calm. Calm creates options. While others are still trying to figure out what's happening, you're already moving. This isn't about living on edge. It's about living grounded. You don't need to be alarmed. You need to be prepared. There's a difference. Alarm drains energy. Preparation builds it. Hard times don't reward the loud or the dramatic. They reward the steady, the people who trained quietly without panic, without excuses, the ones who understood that waiting for a perfect moment is the most dangerous delay of all. If you build stability now, before the pressure is obvious, you won't need to scramble later. You'll already be standing on solid ground while others are still searching for it. When pressure hits, most people don't fight or run, they freeze. That's the part no one talks about. Freezing doesn't look dramatic, it looks like hesitation, indecision, overthinking, waiting. And by the time people realize they're stuck, momentum is already gone. I've seen it happen in high stakes environments where seconds mattered. People with good intentions, good intelligence, even good preparation on paper, suddenly unable to act. Not because they were stupid, not because they were weak, but because their nervous system had never been trained to operate under real pressure. Freezing is a biological response. When the brain encounters unfamiliar stress, it can lock up to conserve energy and avoid perceived danger. Neuroscience research shows that under sudden stress, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thinking, temporarily goes offline. That's when people stop thinking clearly and start reacting emotionally or not reacting at all. In normal life, this looks harmless. You put things off, you delay decisions, you avoid confrontation. But under real pressure, those habits become liabilities. The mind doesn't suddenly rise to the moment. It repeats what it knows. And if all it knows is avoidance, it defaults to stillness. This is why most people will freeze when things get hard. Not because they don't care, but because they've never rehearsed action under discomfort. They've trained themselves to wait for clarity, motivation, or reassurance. Pressure offers none of that. In the teams, we train specifically to eliminate freeze responses, not through hype or aggression, but through repetition. We ran drills tired. We made decisions under time pressure. We practiced when conditions were imperfect. According to training research in elite military units, repeated exposure to stress dramatically reduces freeze response and improves automatic decision making. The solution is not to remove fear. Fear will always show up. The solution is to act anyway. Action interrupts panic. Motion restores clarity. Even small movement shifts the nervous system out of freeze and back into engagement. Here's where most people fail. They think training only counts when they feel strong. They work hard when energy is high and stop when it drops. That teaches the brain a dangerous lesson. Act only when conditions are ideal. Under pressure, conditions are never ideal. The quiet trick that works is training when you don't feel like it. When you're tired, when you're bored, when you're distracted, those moments matter more than peak performance days. They teach your system that action is possible without motivation. Studies in habit psychology back this up. Consistency under low motivation builds stronger behavioral pathways than sporadic intensity. In simple terms, doing something when you don't want to rewires your brain faster than doing a lot when you feel inspired. Freezing also spreads socially. Panic is contagious, so is calm. In uncertain situations, people subconsciously look for cues, they mirror behavior. When no one moves, fear multiplies. When one person acts deliberately, others follow. Leadership often begins with the first controlled step. That's why calm matters more than confidence. Confidence can disappear under stress. Calm is a trained response. When you've practiced operating under strain, your presence changes the room. You don't rush, you don't panic, you assess and move. Most people think they'll rise to the occasion when it counts. That belief is comforting, but it's rarely true. According to Crisis Performance Research, people perform closest to their training baseline, not their best case scenario. Hope doesn't override habit. The good news is that freezing is not permanent. It's learned, which means it can be unlearned. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you weaken the freeze response. Every time you move forward despite discomfort, you build trust in yourself. Hard times expose patterns. They reveal who practiced action and who practiced delay. When pressure hits, there will be a moment where everyone looks around unsure what to do next. Most will hesitate, a few will move. The ones who move aren't fearless. They're familiar with discomfort. They've trained themselves to act before their mind feels ready, and that makes all the difference. Hard times are not a possibility. They are a guarantee. That's the part most people spend their lives trying to ignore. They hope for stability, predictability, smooth paths, but pressure is built into life. The question isn't if it shows up. The question is who you are when it does. I've learned that hard times act like a filter. They don't change people. They reveal them. When pressure increases, excuses disappear, comfort disappears. What's left is your training. According to long-term resilience studies, people who consistently prepare for difficulty handle crises with significantly less emotional volatility than those who rely on talent or intelligence alone. Preparation always outperforms potential. Most people make one final mistake. They wait for the perfect plan. They want certainty before they act. They want guarantees. Hard times don't offer guarantees. Waiting for perfect conditions is just another form of delay disguised as responsibility. Training for hard times doesn't mean living in fear. It means living intentionally. You stop asking, how do I stay comfortable? And start asking, how do I stay capable? That shift changes everything. Capability creates freedom. Comfort creates dependence. The strongest people I've known weren't obsessed with outcomes. They were obsessed with process, daily movement, daily discipline, daily exposure to resistance. Researchers studying elite performers consistently find that simple, repeatable habits outperform complex strategies during periods of stress. When pressure rises, complexity collapses. Simplicity holds. Here's the quiet truth that gives hope. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. You don't need extreme routines or dramatic changes. You need small, non-negotiable actions done consistently: physical training, mental discipline, voluntary discomfort. These become anchors when everything else feels unstable. Hard times don't require heroics. They reward steadiness. When others panic, you breathe. When others overreact, you assess. When others freeze, you move. That's not personality, that's practice. There's a reason experienced operators focus on fundamentals: breathing, movement, awareness. Under stress, fundamentals are all you have. Everything else fades. Studies on performance under extreme pressure show that people who rely on basic, well-practiced skills recover faster and make fewer catastrophic decisions. What most people don't realize is that calm is built long before it's needed. You don't suddenly become composed in chaos. You earn it through repetition, through showing up on days when no one is watching, through doing the hard thing even when it feels pointless. This is where fear flips into hope, because once you accept that hard times are guaranteed, you stop fearing them. You stop being surprised by difficulty. You start expecting it. And expectation removes shock. Shock is what destroys people. When you expect pressure, you conserve energy. You don't waste time complaining. You don't waste time blaming. You adapt, you adjust, you continue forward. That's leadership in its purest form. According to behavioral resilience research, people who frame adversity as inevitable but manageable show higher confidence, faster recovery, and stronger long-term performance. The mind follows the frame you give it. If you frame hardship as injustice, it breaks you. If you frame it as training, it strengthens you. I'm not here to motivate you. Motivation fades. I'm here to tell you the truth early enough that you can prepare. The world doesn't reward wishful thinking. It rewards readiness. Train like pressure is normal. Train like uncertainty is permanent. Train like no one is coming to save you, because when you do, something powerful happens. You stop needing reassurance. You stop needing perfect conditions. You become steady. And when hard times finally make themselves undeniable, and they will, you won't feel special. You'll feel ready. While others are scrambling, you'll already be moving. That's the real advantage. Not strength, not speed, readiness. Train for hard times, not because you're afraid of what's coming, but because you respect reality.